So thanks very much for making some time for me, and really appreciate that.
Absolutely, glad to see you again. We haven't seen each other from Poland, haven't we?
You're David. You're based in Italy.
I am.
And basically, you took part in Shadow's World, and after that, we had in the middle of that actually, because it was just before the second day. We had a short conversation about out of 5 decks you had for Age of Ascension, which is the often decried set. I found it really interesting, and I wanted us to have a bit of a conversation about that. But maybe first and foremost, maybe have an opportunity to introduce yourself as a person, as a card gamer.
Well, Keyforge community, I am David Papagianni. I am an Italian Keyforge player. As Roman said, I did participate in the Shadow Worlds, and at that point, I would shout out to my 2 other brilliant team members. One was DanMat96, might know him from the Keyforge World, recent winner of the Cat 2 tournament in Italy. He got to finals in Kota. Also, really good player, and Daniel Dobre, which is my other teammate, also quite a known player here in Italy because of his different tops he achieved both in the Vault Tour in Bologna. Who I must have to say was the first one who really had the idea of bringing AOA from a competitive level at the Vault Tour in Bologna, Italy. He was one of the only 2 players in the top 16 to bring AOA when Kota was absolutely dominating the field of Keyforge. And then he got into top as well in Poland, where we all hit there together.
So how did you come up to Keyforge? What brought you there?
I've always been in the card world. I was a passionate Yu-Gi-Oh player, Magic, Force of Will. I mean, I've always was in this world. However, the time that one was supposed to have to dedicate to collect the fine cards and the money, I mean, well, the cost of Keyforge, the basic idea why I started was €10, or €10 in my country, €10 a deck, and you could play as much as you want. That escalated quickly, but the concept that you don't have to spend time in building decks and finding cards, you can really be more stationary just to get your deck was really what pushed me to start the game, and it could easily combine that into my other private life, obviously. So studying, working, Keyforge fitting quite nicely, time management wise. Then I fell in love with the game. I think it's a lot more competitive than any other card game right now in the moment. It's the one where although people do associate often that the wins come mostly from the deck rather than the player, I absolutely can't second that. Since obviously there are Keyforge players themselves that demonstrate that.
My line of thinking is the strength of the deck becomes even more important when you're reaching that level of play, because after reaching a certain level, you expect every player to be good. So the strength of the deck makes a lot of the difference. And you're playing against other players who've got 50, 100 reps with a deck, and they don't make that many mistakes either. Then how good your deck is and how good your deck is in that matchup makes a big difference. When we first met in Krakow, most of the Italian players I saw at that point were typically playing Shadows, Untamed, Logos, lots of Time Traveler, lots of Witches and Pixies, and typically it was going very fast and all over the place. Where do you see it now?
The meta right now, unfortunately, we were discussing this regarding my final game at the Shadow Worlds, where we lost, and I actually lost against a Shadow Untamed Dees. The problem of Untamed, because I mean that's what I really want to focus on, is Untamed. Obviously the Shadow Logos Dees houses have always dominated in Kota, and they are still really relevant also for AOA or Worlds Collide. But when you face an Untamed, a Pixie Storm, which shows up with Pixie, Chota, Double Nature's Call. I mean, I was going to face this. I was facing this deck on top 8 in the top 8 of Shadow Worlds, and a friend of mine who knows the deck I was bringing was asking me, okay, you've got a good deck, but what are you going to do against Pixie, Chota, Double Call? I mean, the answer was simple. what's any deck going to do against Pixie Chota double call? I mean, Keyforge is a game where you pass your turn and then you watch your opponent play his. I mean, you just really haven't got any answers. Obviously, Hunting Witch as well in that combo. I was forgetting the crucial element, Hunting Witch, Pixie Chota, Nature's Call. The Log, and then we're talking about Logos. Logos, I mean, it's no secret anymore, which is the fundamental #1 house. I mean, I've always thought this, which has to be present in any deck to make it really, really competitive. Like, really competitive from any kind of approach, right? From any kind of tournament. When you're entering a tournament, you want to bring Logos. Not bringing Logos is risky because your hand can brick. You can face certain these houses which put your combos in crisis. And if you don't have Logos, unless you've got a combo deck such as Jenkers, which we'll probably go and talk about later on, it is mandatory.
Just a quick word about Shadow Words. Your experience overall, how did you like it?
Yeah, well, obviously, I didn't mention the team. We were Team DaVinci. So we were the team who qualified first in the Swiss, going 6-0. As you've mentioned, with 4 AOA decks out of 5, and the 5th being a Worlds Collide inadaptive. So honestly, although we have talked much about the prevalence of Kota and the meta, the fact that we were able to get such a good result really shows also the satisfaction from a player's point of view of really proving that it's not only about the decks. So it was more. There was more to that 6-0 that meant to us, as well as winning. Not winning, getting to first place was great, but it's how we got there, the collaboration, the techniques, the tactics. We were really, really satisfied, and it was an amazing experience. We went against the best of the best. Obviously, we saw the champions. We saw the grand champions we faced the grand champions from France, from Spain, the Italian grand championship we were able to face, and obviously all the best American players, which in the end, although they were a minority, were able to get to the finals. The only 2 American teams against the 6 Europeans in top 8 were able to get to the finals and show their decks as well as ours. Amazing experience. Really, really fun.
My experience was much different. We went 0-6 and I had a couple of good rounds, and I think that one of the nicest compliments, I think it was one of the team from Autocannon. I was playing the adaptive as well, and he said, "I really like your deck," and he was crushing me with it. And he kept being amazed. "It's go fast." Yeah, well, you're obviously playing it much better than I am. Coming back to AOA, I think also there's a couple of factors why people don't play it or don't like it so much. But I think one of the challenges is somehow when they look in the collection in the OK, and they look at the top 10, top 20, maybe top 30 decks, maybe there's 1 or 2 that are AOA, and all the rest is rows and rows of Kota, of Worlds Collide. And sometimes even, I would say, not always that strong, but just very, very highly rated. Do you think there's a bias, and does the rating drive also the behavior?
It doesn't. I mean, honestly, the rating will never affect me, especially if I'm going against an AOA deck. The highest rated AOA deck in the world right now is an 86, I think. I don't think even the top 100 Keyforge decks, I think they're higher than 86. They probably start from 87, 88. That is only because it's got double Jenkers. AOA deck is really, I mean, the AOA decks are really biased on decks of Keyforge. They really don't show, this is especially coming from from someone who wants to sell and buy AOA decks, as we had like to demonstrate in Shadow Worlds. AOA is a lot more than just Amber generation, speed, and all the different classifications and attributes which Doc offers. There's a really big bias.
There's a couple of problems with that way of thinking. I think we like, as human beings, to simplify things. What matters is the matchup. It's not like a one-dimensional scale. and we all rank on that scale. And if you're higher on that scale, you're going to beat everybody below you. Some decks will be very strong against other decks, while these decks would maybe beat the ones that are strong against you. Rock, paper, scissors. And that's the reality. So trying to put everybody on a one-dimensional scale actually fails to capture that.
That connects also on the question you asked me previously on, which is, what is the meta? Which is the current meta? When we were choosing our decks and we were looking at all the strongest decks, all the winning decks, our thought wasn't what's the meta. It was more of what's the anti-meta. Which are those cards that you can bring in the tournament? And because you know that there's going to be a huge amount of Kota decks, there'll be huge amounts of Untamed, Shadows, Logos, because you know there'll be big dinosaurs, there'll be Jenkas, what are the decks you can bring which in a certain sense can cover or can protect yourself from most of these decks? One of our mistakes, this was our personal mistake, which we really could have used for Triad, which was the format there where we lost more. We decided to discard at the end a deck that could have been really helpful, because it was a really big anti-meta deck, just for the purpose of bringing 3 buggies instead of 2, which was a Quicksilver Stone deck. And let's talk about Quicksilver Stone. Quicksilver Stone, if you don't have Artifact Tate, that kills Untamed. That kills Kota's Untamed. You do Hunting Witch, you pass. It kills many Saurians, Edeyes, many World Collide decks, which are mostly concentrated on board control. Perfect. Quicksilver Stone. Where we really regretted not bringing a Quicksilver Stone deck, because we had one. It was a really good one. But as I said, just to say we're bringing 3 buggies. But these are some of these decks that aren't high SAS rated. But when you see against, you have to ban, perma-ban, especially in Triad. You're bringing Worlds Collide, you're bringing Kota, you see a Quicksilver Stone, ban. If you don't have the Artifact 8, that is a deck you don't want to go against because of matchups. And that's where SAS is irrelevant. Because you know that as soon as that card is placed in game and you can't take it out, you're done for. As well as Quicksilver Stone, Heart of the Forest, which we've seen none in Shadow World. I know, so we're expecting Heart of the Forest decks. Actually, we weren't expecting Heart of the Forest decks, and we weren't expecting many Quicksilver Stone decks because of the meta that was going on, which is Kota Rush and Big Saurians. For that reason, we bought decks with low artifact control. So you'll notice that if you go through out of 5 decks we bought, the real cards which are anti-meta, I mean, weren't present in the top 16 of Shadow Worlds. But I'm sure that if people decided or understood that the trend of the best decks in the world that were going to show up were very fast rushes, obviously no-gods, and combo decks, as we've seen. If people started bringing more Quicksilver Stone decks or Heart of the Forest decks, it would have been a complete different top 16. Absolutely. I'm ready to bet on that. So yes, matchups and choice of decks is fundamental. Something that I also noticed in the Grand Championships of Italy, when AOA was starting to become a bit relevant in the meta, was the presence of Sanctum. Sanctum is a house that people, I mean, don't really often mention when you're going into competitive. Sanctum AOA. Something that I noticed, that we noticed, and that my teammate Daniel Dobre understood, especially when he was entering the Italian World Tours and Championships. Sanctum is a house, especially probably from AOA, which goes against the Kota meta. Why? Especially against Shadows, because of the armor. Because of the incremental armor, it's sort of if these Kota decks haven't got big ball removals, the many relentless whispers, the many
poison
waves. I mean, all the rushes and all the small cards which generate amber and do board control in Kota aren't effective against a strong Sanctum deck. And if by turn 2, if by the second turn, an AOA deck it manages to put 4 or 5 Sanctum creatures on board, and your Kota deck doesn't have a big ball removal, the Kota deck will never be able to catch back. It's just constant leap 5, dominate board control, and that is such a shame because Sanctum AOA was really not even considered. It still isn't considered, and it isn't seen in the meta. It's a real shame that it isn't so, because it's a good way of, it's a good house. It's a good house. Even in Kota, it showed its strength. It's a good house to go against the current meta of Untamed Shadows, decent moments.